Happy Black History Month, everyone. Oh, so we're a little hesitant about Black History Month, or maybe it's just a Thursday, a dreary Thursday in Berrien Springs. I don't know which one it is, but I am hype about Black History Month, especially this concept of Afrofuturism. And I've been given the task to introduce Afrofuturism to you in a very pop culture way. And so we are going to do that by going down memory lane and starting off in the year 1975. Do we have any 70s babies here who are willing to stand and be counted? Can you please stand if you are a 70s baby? Can we clap it up for the 70s babies in the place? We're going back to 1975. We're taking that soul train back to a time when soul glow, afros, and black power were on the lips of most black individuals in urban communities. And we're going to stop off, though, in the Midwest, in a place called Richfield, Ohio, where you might have seen this poster strewn everywhere in the downtown square: Muhammad Ali versus Chuck Wepner. Yes, indeed. This fight was the first fight after Muhammad Ali successfully defeated the bear, as he called it, George Foreman in Kinshasa, Zaire, in the Rumble in the Jungle. And now the champion is now needing a tune-up fight for some of his more difficult opponents to come. And so Ali chooses this guy, an American hero named Chuck Wepner. Well, really not a hero. He was an unknown. But he became a hero in this fight because he was white. The fight was actually billed, "Give a white guy a chance." That was the tagline for the fight. Give a white guy a chance. And instantly, Chuck Wepner became a representative of so many white individuals in America who felt as if some of the minorities were starting to get better opportunities than they were. And so the fight begins. And Ali is floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee. You can't hit what you can't see. Until in one of the early rounds, Chuck Wepner lands a phantom blow straight to the sternum and knocks the greatest of all time down. The audience goes crazy. They cannot believe that this unknown, pretty much factory worker out of Ohio actually got the champ to the ground. Oh, but what happened after that will be nothing but a bloody massacre, as Ali, now greatly motivated, goes into his Superman booth and puts on a boxing show for all time, hitting Chuck Wepner somewhere around 70% of his punches thrown landed. And yet Chuck wouldn't go down. And so the fight now goes into pretty much a spectator's fiasco, wondering, could Chuck Wepner stand up against this onslaught from the champion? It's not until round 15 when Ali lands one of his signature straight right hands right down the pipe, and Chuck Wepner finally falls to the canvas. The referee stops the fight, and at that point, Chuck Wepner actually needs to be helped to his feet by his cornerman due to the abuse and beating he just received at the hands of the greatest of all time. But there was another young Italian in the audience who was quite inspired by this courageous feat, and his name is Sylvester Stallone. And Stallone, inspired by Chuck Wepner's story, now moves on to leave that fight, that very fight, and write a screenplay. The screenplay would go on to win an Oscar. It was a screenplay for Rocky. Now, it's interesting, that night at the Oscars, when Rocky was getting so much praise, the greatest of all time comes onto the stage, and guess what happens? He simply comes out and shadow boxes with Stallone because he says, I know who Apollo Creed was. Apollo Creed is me. But Rocky had reimagined the future of Italian Americans. He reimagined a narrative where the unknown blue-collar worker steps in the ring with the greatest of all time and actually wins this time. Also known for taking a beating, but always coming back when no one thinks he can to win. One of the greatest examples of Italian futurism in entertainment history. But where does that futurism leave me? A young African-American boy who's growing up, and his dad introduces him to Rocky. And oh, I loved Rocky. Still to this day, my heart beats every time I hear the Rocky anthem come across the screen, because I know that this is an underdog story, and underdogs always win. Except for the fact that I could not find my story in the Rocky series. Now, I did not notice this as a boy, but I did notice it as a man. That Rocky wasn't for me. That it wasn't a future imagined where I succeed and I excel. For example, we saw that in Rocky 1, Rocky comes off the canvas to challenge the greatest of all time, and it's a draw. But then in Rocky 2, Rocky comes back to beat Apollo Creed. So here, the black guy loses, and the white guy wins. But then we move forward to Rocky 3, where maybe at this point, my narrative will be introduced as a positive thing. Because, hey, Rocky is now up against a militant boxer, a militant urban, black-aware boxer named Clubber Lang from Chicago. And Clubber Lang beats Rocky in the first fight, but ends up losing in the second fight, as Rocky now has to go to Apollo Creed to get the tutoring he needs to take his boxing skills to the next level. So in Rocky 3, I find out about myself that I may win at first, but I will always lose in the end, and at best, I can only expect to assist the white heroine or hero to their victory. But then we finally get to Rocky 4, where someone in this audience who's a Rocky fan is saying, oh, I get it. Yes, this is the time where you're going to point out, nope, the villain of the story was not a black male. No, it was a Russian male. Yeah, and Rocky 4 is released at the time when the Cold War is picking up steam. So the number one villain in American society had now switched from a black face to a Russian accent. But hey, guess what happens in this film? Apollo Creed is killed. And so Rocky, trying to fight on behalf of his best buddy, comes out to challenge the Russian giant, and once again, he wins. But what we don't recognize is how iconography is impacting our psychology. That as certain ethnicities reimagine the world to where Rocky wins all of the time, we have another ethnicity that seems to always fall short and will even die trying to become something greater than themselves. And so where does the Rocky trilogy leave us now? Especially a black young man growing up trying to find himself in the stories of American heroism. Well, fast forward to Afrofuturism, to where a young, up-and-coming, award-winning director approaches Sylvester Stallone with an idea, because he has done the work of reimagining the Rocky narrative. Ryan Coogler approaches Stallone on 3 different occasions, asking him to look at a script where he has actually flipped the script. And Apollo Creed is a hero, and his son Adonis is going to be his prodigy and soon to be champion. Sylvester Stallone turns down Coogler on the first 2 attempts, but on the 3rd attempt, he actually cracks the script open long enough for him to be intrigued and captivated by this turn of events. And so we have Creed 1, which came on the scene and broke all box office expectations as Afrofuturism came to the rescue of that young black young boy watching TV in his house, looking for where his story takes the stage and is a positive thing. And young Adonis, played by Michael B. Jordan, the heartthrob of many women in the country, is now the hero. And the white guy helps him become successful. Truly a reimagined history. Oh, but the story doesn't stop there, because there still needs to be revenge of maybe the most brutal scene in all of Rocky: the destruction of Apollo Creed at the hands of Ivan Drago. So in steps in director Stephen Caple Jr., and he says, I have an idea about helping our audience get some resolution for what happened to Apollo Creed. That script that followed so many Hollywood scripts where the black man always dies somewhere before the middle of the film. And he says, what if we stage a fight between Adonis Creed and the son of Ivan Drago? In steps in Creed 2. And the narrative would be flipped once again to where Adonis, only by disqualification, wins the first fight, but everyone thinks he lost. And so he moves forward to avenge that disqualification win by challenging what everyone believes is an insurmountable odd. And yet Adonis succeeds. A reimagined history where Apollo Creed is the greatest of all time, and Adonis Creed, his son, is once again heavyweight champion of the world. Afrofuturism is an opportunity for all of us to look at the narratives that have been told us by others and to use our imagination, our gifts, our knowledge, our awareness, and our understanding to come to a conclusion that my story is not only valuable, but my story is beautiful. And I believe in classrooms all over the United States of America, there are black students, there are brown students, there are yellow students, there are white students. There are so many different students, but those labels that consist of crayon box colors are insufficient when it comes to capturing the complex beauty of your story, your ancestry. And what the world is waiting for is for you to sit down and reimagine that story and that history. Sylvester Stallone did it when he saw the Italian beaten severely and lose. He reimagined a story where the Italian, yes, is beaten severely, but he wins. Sadly, to accomplish that, he had to disrupt another story. And so we're all challenged with not only reimagining our stories, but also reimagining our stories in a context where other stories can thrive and excel also. And maybe this is the greatest challenge of futurism. Futurism is, for so many people, just a competitive race to see whose story can get to the top before somebody else's story, whose reimagined history can come onto the scene and dominate all other reimagined histories. But I'm thankful that Sylvester Stallone had the courage to right what he wronged some 30, 40, 50 years ago, when he said, I'm going to be a part of rewriting a story where the Italian is a hero, as well as the African American. And so as a little boy I grew up hating Apollo Creed. As a little boy, I grew up hating Clubber Lang. As a little boy, I always rooted for Rocky, but I didn't know how to root for my own community until two young professionals came to the scene and rewrote a story so that my little boy now has a narrative to watch where he roots for Apollo and he roots for Adonis because he sees himself on the screen. Not as a villain, but as a hero. My hope is that all of you here become futurists. If you are of the African diaspora, my hope is that you are an Afrofuturist. If you are from some other ethnic tradition, my hope would be that you would represent that story properly, giving us a look, using your imagination to paint a beautiful picture about what your people not can be or could be, should be or would be, but will be in the future. This weekend, we have the honor of having a guest here who is a scholar and Afrofuturist. His name is Dr. Tyron Douglas. He's currently an associate professor of education policy, as well as an affiliate professor in the Black Studies program at the University of Missouri. Dr. Ty Douglas is well published. He has been listed as one of the 40 under 40 by the Columbia Times, as well as he has gone on to write works such as Border Crossing Brothers. And on this coming fall, he's going to be releasing a work on student uprisings and how those uprisings have changed the faces of campuses. Dr. Ty Douglas is going to be with us here for a short Q&A. He'll also be with us on tomorrow evening at our Vesper service, and then finally he will make his final presentation at New Life during our God Encounter. I'm excited to have Dr. Ty Douglas with us. He has done extensive work on athletes, specifically black athletes, and how they find identity on and off the field. And so at this time, we're going to invite Dr. Ty Douglas to come to our stage. I know he's getting mic'd up right around the corner from us. I'm excited that he's here. He's also from Bermuda. Anybody been to Bermuda before? You have to go if you haven't. He'll actually buy anyone in here a ticket if you want to go. Please tell him I said that. He will chuckle, and with a Bermudan accent, he will respond. So Dr. Ty Douglas, are you ready? Are you set? Is it time to go? Can you give me a thumbs up? There he is. Can you please welcome to the stage Dr. Ty Douglas? Dr. Douglas, I'm glad that you're here with us this weekend.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Andrews. How are you? Awesome, awesome.
Listen, man, we are celebrating Afrofuturism and galvanizing our imaginative faculties to repaint a narrative that has oftentimes been derided and also put down on American soil. Can you talk to us about Afrofuturism, how that intersects with your work there at the University of Missouri, as well as your personal passion to see people use their dreams, gifts, and talents to change the world?
Sure, let's try that one more time. Good morning, everybody. How you doing? I appreciate you just being patient with me. I jumped off the plane. I did everything I could to get here. I'm just so excited to be with you. Thank you, choir. I didn't get a chance to hear you, but I'll be definitely listening to the recording, all right? First of all, I'm just excited to be here. Can I just tell you why? Can I tell you why? Because I believe that moments are powerful, all right? I believe that moments are powerful, and I believe there are students here today that I won't get to see tomorrow night. Right? So, or at least I hope that you'll be here tomorrow night. So I just want to make sure we make that connection. But I had a suspicion that if I didn't get here today, I wouldn't get a chance to see some of you. All right, the power of this weekend, the power of Afrofuturism for me is the capacity and opportunity to look back, to look forward. Mm-hmm. Right? A lot of times when we think about our stories, we don't really think about how it connects to our past. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to connect with each of you because each of you are part of this story. I know a lot of times when we think about Black History Month, we think it's just for black people, right? Some of us think, okay, well, Black History Month, I'll just get through chapel. In fact, I hear, is it accurate that this is like the only mandatory service, like for this weekend?
It is.
That's what I hear. So I know there are some of you on the sound of my voice, like you're going to tick this box, right? And then your intention was to not be here tomorrow night. Can I just invite you to come tomorrow night? Because you are actually a part of Black history. Yeah, like Black history actually belongs to you as well. And so when I think of my own story, when I think of my own journey, my own work at the University of Missouri, a city, Columbia, Missouri, with about 120,000 people. How many of you watched the news in 2015? You saw our football team make a major stand. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. How many of you heard about that? All right, some of you did. All right, how many of you heard about Colin Kaepernick?
Oh, yes.
All right, so you know about Colin Kaepernick, right? You know that Colin Kaepernick made a stand, right? You know that, right? In fact, let me go back. He's been kneeling. You know, Colin Kaepernick has been kneeling. But before Kaepernick kneeled, the Mizzou athletes stood. And there was a moment as I stood with our student athletes at the University of Missouri. It was a crazy time on our campus. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow. But like I was in some spaces that I really shouldn't have been in as a young assistant professor. Can I be honest with you? I didn't have tenure at the time, and I was operating in some spaces where, our presidents and our administrators were calling on young folks like me on campus, if you will, to be able to guide some of the conversations that need to be had. And there was a moment where I saw our student athletes. We were actually in a panel discussion about race, about racism. And I was sharing some things with them that they perhaps hadn't heard before. And there was this moment where there was a collective understanding that the enemy was not each other, but that racism was actually the enemy. Mm-hmm. And they began to look at some historical things as well as some contemporary realities that pushed them, and there was a look in their eyes that I wish I could see in this room. Because I believe that if we could have athletes, not of all who claim to be Christian, to see racism and to see hope beyond it and to see what could be done about it, I believe in a space like Andrews University that something powerful could happen this weekend. And so when I think about Afrofuturism, when I think about this weekend and the opportunity to connect with you, I believe that we are poised for something special. God has given me something. He's shown me something that I believe could actually change our church, and I need you to be a part of it.
So, Dr. Ty, I remember the first time I heard you present, your own future was in jeopardy at one point. And you talked about the power of a flutter. Yeah. And I believe your mother had a future vision in a moment that actually not only preserved your life,
absolutely,
but we must give honor and pay honor to her contribution to you standing here today.
Yeah, absolutely. This is why it's so important. I need you real quick. This is why it's so important. This is why this work is vital. Because it's really not about us. Like, it's bigger than us. All right, and the reality is, before I was Dr. Ty Douglas, before I had written a number of books, before I was a professor at the University of Missouri, I was an embryo inside of a 19-year-old college freshman. My mom was a student at Oakwood University who had left Bermuda with hopes and dreams to be able to get a degree. And she had to make a decision between a degree in nursing or a degree in me. I need you to listen to me because she was about your age, some of you. And every time I share this, I know that there's somebody, even on a Christian campus, who also finds themselves in that tension between decisions, reality, and even the scorn that you may get because you may be facing a decision that may not make people very happy. And so I just want to say this respectfully. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like my mother, maybe you've made some decisions that you're ashamed of, there's therefore now no condemnation to them in Christ. Can I just share that with you?
Amen.
My mom was at a lonely abortion clinic, she said. And here's the thing that really, really is important, is that I was making some decent moves in life. I was about your age, but I was struggling to put some things together in my life. Like, I was a teacher at Bermuda Institute. I was trying to, teach kids about a God that I scarcely knew. And I didn't really fully understand why I was struggling, chap. I couldn't put it together until my mom shared something with me. She said, son, yeah, I know you know that I got pregnant with you at 19, but here's what I didn't tell you. Is that when I was 19, I was pregnant with you, I actually found myself at a lonely abortion clinic. And she said, while she was at the abortion clinic, she said, for the very first time, she felt me move. She had never felt me move before. She didn't realize that there was life inside of her. I mean, she knew there was life, but she hadn't felt it yet. So it wasn't visceral. And so she said for the very first time, she felt a flutter in her stomach and knew she couldn't do it. That's not the only cool part of it. I'll tell you more about the story, but let me just say this to you. That when I finished my master's degree in Huntsville, Alabama, and my mom was working on her associate's degree at Bermuda College while working multiple classes, when I finished, I said, Mom, let's change places. When I go back to Bermuda, I start teaching at Bermuda Institute. Let me take your little car. I'll give you my apartment in Huntsville. You make moves. You go and get that bachelor's degree and get your master's degree. And let me tell you something else that's real cool. I got a call from my mom yesterday, and this has been a part of the vision all along. She gave me the update that she has actually now made progress where she is looking to start a doctoral program at my university this coming summer.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Why is this important? Particularly as it connects to Black History Month, because the reality is some of you've come from families where conversations about race and racism are not really vogue. It's tough. You have family members who are outright, maybe just barrel-faced racist. Some of us also come from backgrounds as people of color where we've embraced mindsets that also reflect some of those problematic ideologies as well. So this is not just something that's for white folks or for Black folks. All of us have to account for how we've been impacted by systematic oppression. And so when you are willing to have these conversations, not only do you get free, but it also is about generations where a mom can now go back to the very same place of her shame and to have victory. And so I want to encourage you real quick. Some of you, you're not going to be able to make it tomorrow night because you have other plans. I hope you'll watch it. But I believe that this is a special time as it relates to movement. Can I just, I don't know how much time I have left, Chap. How much time we got left?
We still got 3 minutes.
We got 3 minutes. Let me just tell you real quick. As it relates to movement, we talk about Dr. King. You with me? Right? How many folks celebrated Dr. King's birthday last month, right? Yeah? But what I realized is there was Diane Nash. She's a civil rights leader. She talked about how we commemorate King, but we don't really advance his vision.
It's powerful.
So it's like her analogy, she says, is like commemorating the Wright brothers, but not really learning how to really fly. Mm-hmm. So you were satisfied that they learned how, to just do a little something. But this morning, as I drove to Kansas City at 2:30 in the morning, so we could have 15 minutes right now, I needed more than what the Wright brothers had. There needed to be greater development of the vision that had been given to them. 40 years later now, and Dr. King would have been 90 this year. Like, I believe that we are at a special time as relates to movement. Mm-hmm. It's time for us to move, Andrews, and as the flagship institution of our denomination as relates to a higher education space, this is a special place. You have a special opportunity to do some things that are amazing. I'm not just talking about in theory, but I'm also talking about in practice. So tomorrow night, I'm going to show you some of the things that I've experienced on my campus. I'm also going to show you what ministry and movement looks like in Columbia, Missouri. We've actually planted a church that's doing some amazing things in an amazing city. So I can't wait to get with you tomorrow night.
Dr. Ty, I thank you not only for being on the road at 2:30 a.m. this morning, my goodness, just to be able to come here and to share an introduction to the content that you will be sharing with us throughout the rest of the weekend. But I'm hoping that you as a listener, you've heard this story of movement. For Dr. Ty Douglas, it started as an embryo, and it literally saved his life. Him making a move saved his life. And I believe we can still preserve life here today, in this country and others, when individuals decide to make a move. And so for the rest of this weekend, we're going to be celebrating Afrofuturism, but not just for this weekend. We have a whole entire month planned for you of highlighting Afrofuturism and the importance of reimagining stories. You can access that schedule at andrews.edu. Right there on the home page, you can click the Black History Month tab, and you can have access to the rest of the schedule for the month. We thank you for coming out to another installment of World Changers, and we pray that you would have the courage to reimagine your future. You are dismissed.